would be able to start up a $20 billion company? His name was Brain Chesky, just like every other New Yorker, and pursue a career in industrial engineering. He wasn't happy. He knew he needed something else. He knew he was meant for something else. They created a platform in which they were providing a bed and breakfast for these short-term renters. So in the 2008 presidential election, they started their own limited edition cereals with McCain and Obama cereals. Would you ever believe a part-time hockey player would be able to start up a $20 billion company? His name was Brain Chesky. Brian spent majority of his childhood in New York, where he gained a great love and passion for ice hockey and the arts, just like every other New Yorker you would expect. However, during his mid-childhood years, Brian spent majority of his childhood painting and designing shoes. But however, what changed his perspective and difference towards the overall architecture was when he started working with his parents on their landscape project, on their landscape home project, where he developed a great interest in landscape architecture. Right after college, Brian decided to move to Los Angeles, just like every other New Yorker, and pursue a career in industrial engineering. That's where he got his first job at 3DID, where majority of his time and day was spent designing medical equipment, shoes, and toys. However, despite the great job security and position he was in, any other designer would be completely happy with that job, but not Brian. The long commutes to work, the aggressive hours was really getting to Brian. He wasn't happy. He knew he needed something else. He knew he was meant for something else. So there, he decided he needed a change. And the risk taker that Brian is, he decided, why not? So in 2007, Brian, not afraid of failing, decided to move to San Francisco and move in with his buddy Joe. Now, Joe and Brian at the time didn't have a lot of money. Actually, they were flat out broke. However, what Brian decided was, even though they were struggling to pay rent basically, they decided, well, they needed a fast form of funds to gain in order to pay their rent. So Brian decided to rent out their apartment. So by renting out their apartment for short-term renters, they created a platform in which they were providing a bed and breakfast for these short-term renters. Air mattresses, Pop-Tarts for breakfast. Simple concept, very low cost. Surprisingly, even towards Brian and Joe, it was pretty successful. So what happened was it continued to become a success, and that's when Brian decided they needed to expand, and this platform was working. So they were looking towards the next step. So despite the success, Brian decided he needed to expand, and that's where expanding it, they launched their first website, airbedandbreakfast.com. Through that incredible launch in 2008, it was an unexpected success towards Brian's great determination and perseverance. However, it was really difficult in the beginning to raise funds and capital. So what Brian decided was, well, we need to do something different. That's where he came up with a genius idea through his designing background, where him and his buddies decided, let's launch a different concept. So in the 2008 presidential election, they started their own limited edition cereals with McCain and Obama cereals. Well, it was a crazy concept at the time, but it created a creative firestorm across the US, and especially during their marketing industry. So Brian, through that process, was able to gain $30,000 of funding. So that's a lot of money, put it back in the company. But it didn't just stop there. Brian got a couple of calls from a couple of investors during that time. That's where he met Paul Graham in specific. So Paul Graham met him, they had a chat, and they were wondering, how could we expand Airbnb further? At the time, it was called Air Bed and Breakfast. So after speaking with Paul Graham decided he would invest $20,000 in 6% stake, a small stake in the business at the time. So that's where he invested that money. By 2009, the website, after gaining that $20,000 capital from Paul Graham, gained over 10,000 users and over 25,000 renters. So there was expansive growth within a period of 2 years for Brian. So you must be wondering what the moral of this story is. So the moral of Brain Chesky's story is that in order to be a tech entrepreneur, it's not an easy process. Actually, it's quite difficult. However, with Brian, you can take it for an example. He didn't have the funds or the technical know-how at the time. But what Brian had was a real passion and a real grit to solve a real world problem at the time. So it was through that passion and through that grit that Brian was able to garner more users and greater access for his overall existing customer base, for them to be able to go through his website and book their own vacations and book their own stays at any time. So at the end of the day, it's not about how much money you have or your technical know-how at the time. It's the passion. And with that passion and with that grit, you'll be able to achieve anything and everything will go into place. The purpose of this video is to inspire the future generation of tech entrepreneurs and provide them with the necessary information and know-how on how to move forward with their dreams and aspirations. Stay tuned for the next series of videos. Thank you.